I think the Republicans speak very inarticulately about this subject. I watched some of them without the exceptions, et cetera, et cetera. I said, other than certain parts of the country, you're not going to win on this issue.
Donald Trump accusing others of speaking inarticulately on an issue. Now, in this case, he's actually referring to members of his own party on the issue of abortion. Let's hear more of what he had to say.
Democrats don't want to see abortion in the 7th month. Okay, I speak to a lot of Democrats. They want a number. There is a number, and there's a number that's going to be agreed to. And Republicans should go out and say the following, because I think the Republicans speak very inarticulately about this subject. I watched some of them without the exceptions, et cetera, et cetera. I said, other than certain parts of the country, you're not going to win on this issue, but you will win on this issue when you come up with the right number of weeks, because Democrats don't want to be radical on the issue. Most of them, some do. They don't want to be radical on the issue. They don't want to kill a baby in the 7th month or the 9th month or after birth. And they're allowed to do that, and you can't do that.
Now, I would just like to commend Donald Trump for telling the truth about where Democrats stand on the issue, because despite the incessant accusations that Democrats want, like late-term abortions right after the baby is born, which is murder, by the way. There are literally laws on the books against that. Trump was willing to actually tell the truth, but not quite. Because earlier in the interview, he basically claimed that Democrats are extreme on the issue and they love late-term abortions and they want abortions up until the point the baby's gonna be born and even after the baby is born.
Yeah.
So it's like he loves to say two things at once. He does it on every single issue.
So look, we're burying the lead. I'm gonna get to the lead in 1 second, but let's keep burying it for one more second.
Okay.
So he says in the earlier part, sometimes they want it after the birth. Well, again, not a thing, that's called homicide. And then they bothered to debunk that. No, there's no law or regulation Democrats have pushed for killing people outside the womb. Not a thing that exists, right? But he says that, then he turns around and he knew very specifically, in the longer version of the interview, he said 92% of Democrats don't want abortions in the 3rd trimester. That's true. So why did you make up that the Democrats want to murder kids in the 9th month and afterwards, right? And why did you say it in the same interview?
It's just so crazy,
right? Like,
so crazy.
he's inexplicable in so many ways. But finally, the major story here, Donald Trump is pro-choice. That was a definitive pro-choice segment. She asked many times and he answered many times, we just have to pick a week. We have to pick the number of weeks. And then okay, and that's the answer. Well, if you want to say that abortion can be legal up until a certain number of weeks, that's basically the pro-choice position.
Exactly.
The anti-choice position is no weeks. It's a life form, and you're not allowed to touch it.
Life
right?
at the moment of conception, which, by the way, moment of conception, the second sperm enters the egg, even before it implants itself into the uterus, right? Life at the moment of conception, anything happens to that life, it's tantamount to killing babies.
And not only is, okay, if you say, all right, that is definitively the anti-choice or pro-life position, however you want to frame it, right? Life begins at conception. No, I've heard that for 40 straight years now. So there's no, and you could ask them, that is their position. But you say, all right, well, look, that's the activists, et cetera, but the Republicans that are passing laws are saying 6 weeks, like Ron DeSantis, right?
Which is effectively a ban because women don't know they're pregnant, usually at 6 weeks.
And so our side will say that, and maybe some people on the anti-choice side will say that. That's okay, I mean, it's basically a ban on abortion if it's 6 weeks, right? We'll take it. But Trump is not saying that. In fact, he's actively fighting against that. And he's saying, no, let's pick weeks, whether it's 15 weeks, 24 weeks. Well, if you pick 24 weeks, that is exactly Roe. That's exactly what Roe said.
That's exactly right, yes. Now look, what prompted the answer that you just heard from Trump was the question of whether Trump would pursue a federal ban on abortion. And in the context of that answer, he also discussed how, look, people wanted the issue to go back to the states. I helped make that happen. It should be left up to the states. But then he proceeds to talk about what could be done on a federal level, right? So again, kind of contradicting himself by even answering that question. If he genuinely believes it's a states' rights issue, he would have just said, look, it's a states' rights issue, let's move on. But he didn't. He started talking about what could happen on a federal level, and his views on abortion-related policy on a federal level is the pro-choice perspective. And look, this is what I think is actually transpiring here. You say Donald Trump is dumb. I think that in certain areas, he is not informed. He certainly doesn't know how our government works. He certainly doesn't know how our Constitution works. But putting that aside, the one area where I think Trump is actually pretty smart is politics. Just saw a headline right now about how he's planning on, delivering a speech about the striking auto workers, right? He understands that that is a popular thing to do. Lean into the economic populism, even if you don't mean it. In this case, he saw what happened in the midterm elections, the red wave that never happened. A huge reason for that was because of the abortion bans. It was because of the reversal of Roe. And what's hilarious to me is that as he's calling out Republicans, he's getting a lot of backlash from these anti-abortion, anti-choice conservatives, because they're delusional about the popularity of what their views are. But before we get to that, one more video where Trump calls out specific politicians by name.
If a federal ban landed on your desk, if you were reelected, would you sign it at 15 weeks?
Are you talking about a complete ban?
A ban at 15 weeks.
Well, people are starting to think of 15 weeks. That seems to be a number that people are talking about right now.
Would you sign that?
I would sit down with both sides and I'd negotiate something, and we'll end up with peace on that issue for the first time in 52 years. I'm not going to say I would or I wouldn't. I mean, DeSantis is willing to sign a 5-week and 6-week ban.
Would you support that? You think that
I
goes
think
too
what he
far?
did is a terrible thing and a terrible mistake. But we'll come up with a number. But at the same time, Democrats won't be able to go out in 6 months, 7 months, 8 months and allow an abortion.
What Trump just said there, despite all the backlash he's getting from conservatives, and we'll get to the backlash in a moment, was actually spot on in regard to where public opinion is on that issue.
Yeah, so and I don't think it's a matter of being smart or not. I think that he's a con man, and he has been his whole life. And so what do con men do?
Some con men are smart.
Yeah, some are for sure, but he's a blunt instrument.
Okay.
So he just, and I wrote about this in my book, Justice is Coming. He would test along with assistants. They'd go on talk show hosts, or first they'd listen to talk show hosts, he'd have the assistants do it, and then he would go on with like Mark Levin and Sean Hannity, etc. And they would test 2 different messages because they don't care. He would have been a Democrat if he thought that was more effective, right? He would have been super kind and giving if he thought that was going to be more effective.
Oh, it's so depressing that that's not effective.
I know. So what they found out was what Republicans wanted to hear was, we hate immigrants. That's the number one thing that they heard back from those experiments, basically. And like he could have put out a pro-immigrant message because he's used undocumented immigrants his whole life on his real estate projects, right? And in fact, they tested it and they came back, no, you gotta hate immigrants. So in this case, what's he doing? Well, he's giving people what they want, and it's actually elementary politics. So he's like, oh, people don't want a 6-week ban, and people in America are overwhelmingly pro-choice. So then why don't we be pro-choice, but we just don't say we are? So like that's why he says, well, I'm gonna negotiate number of weeks, 15, 24. Again, that's the pro-choice position.
Yep.
So he's just saying he's pro-choice without using those words. So why don't the other Republicans do it? Good question. So the reason Ron DeSantis is going extreme on abortion, social issues, etc., is because he's trying to find room on the right to be seen as more right-wing than Trump rather than left-wing. Because if he's seen as left-wing, it's over. He has no chance of winning, right?
Yep.
So he's got to outflank him on the right. So he's got to go to these extreme positions to have a prayer of winning the primary. And then, by the way, if DeSantis or any of them win, they'll renounce those positions in the general election. And most of the media will come out and go, oh, that's a smart pivot. No, that's just a lie, right? But anyway, that hasn't happened yet. So right now, Trump is going with the more popular position, because duh.
No, but it is amazing, right? Because DeSantis' strategy will lead to even more failure. And to be sure, Trump has only widened the gap between himself and Ron DeSantis in the Republican primary polling, but they don't get it. I mean, it reminds me of the kind of campaigning that we're seeing from Mike Pence. I mean, put aside the fact that Republican voters who are loyal to Donald Trump absolutely despise Mike Pence. Put that aside. Even if that weren't the case, Mike Pence has largely campaigned on anti-abortion garbage. Doesn't bode well for him, and it hasn't been really doing well for Ron DeSantis either. Let me just read what Ron DeSantis's war room put out on X. New, Trump says he will compromise with Democrats on abortion so they're nice to him. Both sides are going to like me. Then he says it's a terrible thing babies with heartbeats are protected in Iowa, Florida, and South Carolina. He didn't quite say that, but nonetheless. Ron DeSantis.
But he kind of did though, I'll come back to that.
Ron DeSantis, but they're not heartbeats at 6 weeks. Okay, anyway, Ron DeSantis will never sell out conservatives to win praise from corporate media or the left. But listen, Ron DeSantis War Room, get to know voters in your own party. Because voters in your own party don't like the draconian anti-abortion policies, including the effective abortion ban in the state of Florida. They believe that abortions should be legal in the first trimester. Yes, even the majority of Republican voters feel that way.
So look, a huge thing happened today regarding Ron DeSantis and abortion. One of the top Republican donors in the country is given in the hundreds of millions. Pulled out from DeSantis and said, I'm not going to support him anymore.
Why?
Okay.
What happened?
That's because of the 6-week abortion ban.
Oh, interesting, fascinating.
Now, why, you think, is he just, even though he's a massive Republican, he's just adamantly pro-choice? No, he says that's going to eliminate him from winning the general election. And you see the really rich donors that actually control our politics, the right-wingers, they're not actually right-wingers. They don't actually care about abortion. They used abortion to gain power so they can get tax cuts. So now that abortion is going to cost them power, they're telling all the Republican politicians, dump it like it's a bad habit. Who gives a goddamn what these religious idiots think? We're just using them as cannon fodder for our tax cuts, right? So dump their sorry asses and move on. And they're like, DeSantis, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you dumping them? It's not because DeSantis is open-hearted, it's for the strategy that I explained to you in a second. But the donor thinks, I don't care what your primary strategy is. I just care about winning a Republican winning the general election, because any Republican will give me the tax cuts that I want.
Right, and look, for those who are curious, what do you mean it's just a way of getting tax cuts for corporations and the rich? Just look into Paul Weyrich, who found a way to unite and galvanize religious voters through the abortion issue. But that wasn't what motivated him. What motivated him was the fact that schools that refused to desegregate were no longer able to claim like tax breaks and tax deductions, right? And so he was furious about that and needed an issue to galvanize religious voters, and abortion worked. But in this day and age, after having reproductive rights granted to Americans through Roe v. Wade in the 1970s, it's really hard to go back. Even among religious voters, a lot of them are like, I don't know, man. Maybe should be legal in the first trimester. Because yeah, people want freedom. They want to be able to make decisions about their own lives. And abortion isn't simply a culture war issue. It is an economic issue as well. Considering the kind of country we live in, the lack of support that families get in this country when it comes to everything from medical bills, our healthcare system, childcare. It's a big issue for a lot of people, and I think it's a big issue across the aisle, regardless of religion.
So what Anna refers to, I partly explain in chapter 3 of my book, Justice is Coming out tomorrow, actually, tyt.com/justice to order. And that chapter is called Why Republicans Suck. And among the reasons why they suck is because not only do they try to trick you guys, they try to trick their own voters, because they don't give a damn about their voters. All they care about is, give me the money, Lebowski. They're not investing $100 million into politicians because they don't expect a return. They expect a massive return. And by the way, even Trump is now saying, oh yeah, corporate taxes, I'm gonna cut them even more. So, and that part of the strategy is actually smart. He's undercutting DeSantis with his base. DeSantis's base was the donors. So he's outflanking him in every direction. But last thing I wanna say is, go back to the substance of this. He said about the 6-week ban that it would be a terrible thing and a terrible mistake. Well, you're just told all of the pro-life voters in the country that their position is a terrible thing and a terrible mistake. That is indisputable. You can go and watch the tape. That's what he said about the 6-week ban. So yes, there should be repercussions from conservatives going, oh, I guess Donald Trump was lying to us the whole time and he was pro-choice the whole time. Which, by the way, remember, he used to be publicly.
Listen, my prediction is they won't be upset.
Of course not.
Right. So we'll see.
But hey, you know what? Maybe good news out of this, because maybe now MAGA will be like, Trump said it. We are now all pro-choice. We'll take it.
If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.